What are some things that people just assume women who are in this position may go through, but really isn't the case at all? They can do to help offset the risk of postpartum stress and anxiety and depression?
Yeah,
How does a client find you and an expert like this in your field?
there are a couple of ways. Nationally, there's a organization called Postpartum Support International.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you again for joining us. My name is Angel Myers. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. And today you're with us for the Everyday I Do show or podcast. And today we're going to talk with esteemed guest. I have Catina Williams. But just so, if you're new to us, just really quickly, Everyday I Do is a platform where we discuss ways to help you find and maintain the life and the love that you always wanted. So we thank you for being with us here today. And without further ado, we're going to talk to our guest today, which is Catina Williams. Just a little bit about her before we get started. Catina Williams is a licensed clinical social worker with over 20 years experience providing counseling and support to women and families. She's a graduate of Norfolk State University's Master Social Work program. Ms. Williams is a certified perinatal mental health therapist with training in reproductive psychology. She's a certified trauma specialist who uses the following trauma treatment modalities: EMDR, brain spotting, and IFS. She is the owner of Bloom Psychotherapy, a fully virtual therapy practice dedicated to helping women heal, grow, and bloom into the best version of themselves. Ms. Williams is passionate about improving the mental health of women who are trying to conceive, are pregnant, and during the postpartum period. Some of those special populations that she serves are NICU moms, pregnancy after loss, infertility, birth trauma, postpartum depression, anxiety, and of course, more. Her practice offers individual therapy, perinatal wellness, coaching, and therapy intensives. Ms. Catina lives in Chesapeake, Virginia with her husband and daughter. Her greatest joy is spending time with her family, having Sunday dinner, and going to Virginia Beach. Without further ado, I welcome Ms. Catina Williams. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. That
You're
was
welcome.
a lovely welcome. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Absolutely. So we're going to jump right in. We've given kind of an intro what your background is, but I want to dive in and talk a little bit more finely about what that looks like, what you offer. And specifically here at the podcast, as we like to look at the everyday I do, kind of those shifts, the actionable strategies, the things that help us to get to the place in our life or in our love life where we've always wanted. So that being said, can you tell us a little bit more about the kind of work that you do and what makes it unique as a clinician?
I guess my first part of my training has been in trauma treatment. And with that, I expanded my education and learning on reproductive mental health. So with reproductive mental health, we kind of look at the whole process. So when you're thinking about getting pregnant to being pregnant and, then also the period after. So through that journey, a lot of times there's a lot of worry, anxiety, some feelings of sadness, a lot of grief. And so I think that a big part of the work that I do is helping people to work through what they vision, their ideals, and working towards accepting what is, where we are right now versus where you want it to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, so it's really hard, for some people, because things, may not go according to plan.
How does one get to that place? I'm imagining, as a potential customer, client, trying to find resources, and as a clinician, trying to create resources for families who find themselves in that situation or women who find themselves in that situation. How do you get to that evolution where, I don't know, maybe it was an experience in the profession where you noticed there weren't just as many resources? I'm just wondering, how does one get to this specific part of offering services, perinatal services to women in the clinical
Mhm.
field?
Yeah, so I think for me, the journey, just has been personal. It wasn't how I started out, but based on my life experiences, dealing with infertility and anxiety after, postpartum
Yeah.
anxiety. I think that, after a while, I said, maybe this is something I could get, more education and, so I was able to use, my personal experiences to, help me decide to, dive into the field of perinatal mental health. Yeah, when it comes to perinatal mental health, most of the people who are therapists and doulas and who join the field, they usually have their own experience. So it's like about 90%. It was the last statistic that I saw as far as perinatal mental health therapists. 90% of them have their own, experience,
Gotcha.
personal experience. So yeah. So
Wow.
I think that that is, what prompts a lot of people to, come into the field of perinatal mental health. And that, certainly was my experience.
That's a pretty significant number. Um,
Yeah, it
and at the
is.
same time, it's also compelling when you think of as a client or someone who's in that position wanting someone who can understand. I would imagine how comforting it would be to know that I'm getting a professional who understands it in a clinical way, but also in a personal way, having walked
Absolutely.
similarly in those shoes.
Mhm. Yeah. And, when I was going through my own journey, one of the things that was, a challenge for me was, having that being able to see, someone who looks like me and has a similar experience as a provider. And it was very difficult for me to find that. So, part of that is just, part of my journey is offering that to other people, especially women of color,
Yeah.
to have a person who has gone through it.
Gotcha. No, that is an important element and that makes sense. I'm wondering how, you talked a little bit about how you got to this point in the evolution of your process. How does a client get to that point? Right. I know that you were just sharing a moment ago that one piece that was important for you was wanting someone who had the expertise, but also wanting someone who maybe understood your background, who understood your, cultural experience, or even simply just kind of looked familiar. So how does I'm just looking at the process of getting from the point where you recognize you need help and learning that there are some specialty services in this way. How does a client find you and an expert like this in your field?
So there are a couple of ways. Nationally, there's a organization called Postpartum Support International, and they're throughout the United States, but also globally. A lot of people use them as a resource.
Okay.
And Postpartum Support International is a wonderful organization
That's
that provides support to women going, through postpartum challenges. And they have a lot of groups. They have just a lot of education. That's actually where I got my training in perinatal mental health. So they provide a lot of resources. And so regardless of where you are in the country, you can find support, through Postpartum Support International. So they are one of the places that I feel, people can use as a resource. And they also have a directory of all types of providers. So they have therapists, and they also have, doulas, doctors, psychiatrists.
yeah.
So everybody is, all of the professionals that you may need are listed in that directory. The other thing is in Virginia, there is a organization called Postpartum Support Virginia,
Okay.
and they are a big help
Is that like a local chapter, or is it still part of the
Yeah.
postpartum support intervention?
So they are, yeah, I think they are part of the Postpartum Support International, but they have like their own.
Independent.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So they serve all Virginia, and they also have a separate directory and all of that. So yeah, there are a lot of, there are different resources. Psychology Today is a way you could kind of look up providers as well. But those two organizations, I would say, would be the way that, many people find perinatal mental health resources. And specifically like for women of color and Black women.
And it's escaping me too, but we're going to put the links in the show notes.
Yeah.
So we'll definitely have it if you can't recall it right now.
Therapy for Black girls. Oh my
Okay.
goodness.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So I get a lot of referrals from Therapy for Black girls. And
Good.
yes, please link that in the show notes. Yeah.
Excellent. Those are some really good resources, and a few of them I had never heard of. So I know that's going to be an important resource for some of our listeners. So thank you for sharing that. I'm curious. So that being said, what would you say is your ideal client, and the most appropriate? But then also, when they're like, what are some of the themes that come up in the process?
So I would say my ideal client is just someone who, has come to the place where they feel like they need some additional support, that they're open to, just absorbing information. Part of what I do is provide some education, some psychoeducation, and just kind of normalize, like, yes, it's normal to feel this grief, to feel disappointed, to feel worried about the future, and to feel sad about, those things that have not gone as planned. So, I like to, be able to support women, through that as well. So my ideal client is women. I only work with women.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So I only work with women.
So not couples specifically, but women specifically. That is the area.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
That's good.
Yeah. Yeah. So I only work with women. I do, I have offered, like, when a couple is dealing with, let's say, a woman is having trouble in the postpartum period and she's struggling with like postpartum depression and things like that, I will, have a couple session where I would meet with, the partner and, provide some education and just kind of a space for them to explore what that experience is like for them, and to, kind of explore some ways that they could cope together. So I usually, limit that though to like 2 or 3 sessions. And, after that, if there's additional support needed, I would refer them out.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I'm imagining that, even with that, some of those areas of concern that someone might be questioning, even right now as they're listening, and trying to decide if this is appropriate for them, if should they find a specialist in this area of counseling. If there are also like misconceptions, what are some things that people just assume women who are in this position may go through, but really isn't the case at all? Are there any misconceptions that you noticed specifically?
Yeah, there are several. So one is, some of the things that I've learned just in my training and even with my experience is that, when you decide, hey, I want to get pregnant, that, you don't necessarily, everybody doesn't necessarily get pregnant right away. You think that this is something that, you see people just popping up, getting pregnant, and, and it's not, that's not always how it happens. The other thing is there's a statistic, 50% of pregnancies are like unplanned. So there are a lot of pregnancies that are unplanned.
How does that affect this population specifically, though, when you say that 50% are unplanned?
Yeah, so part of the working with this population is that some people may be dealing with anxiety or depression related to the pregnancy.
Mhm.
So they may not be happy about it. They may
Ah.
be worried about the future. Yeah.
You're
So,
saying
I
that
work
even
with,
though there's some challenges with difficulty with getting pregnant, that sometimes when the pregnancy happens, that too can come with its own anxieties and fears.
right. So if you are planning, trying to get pregnant and you get pregnant, there may be still some worries and thoughts about the future. But then there are people that I work with who, you know, they weren't planning to get pregnant.
Oh, I
So they were, they're dealing with some anxiety about, being pregnant and what that will, look like. One of the things too to that I, just kind of shifting looking at couples and, partnerships is that having a partner can definitely help. The nature of that relationship has a big impact on whether a woman, a birthing person, experiences postpartum depression. The nature of that relationship.
Do you mean so when you say that, I'm wondering if that also is speaking to like the quality of communication or the quality of the bond or supportiveness, or you tell
Yes.
me. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, if there is some challenges with the relationship,
Yeah.
then that can impact the journey, before she delivers. So she may during pregnancy, she may be experiencing anxiety and worry about the future because the relationship isn't stable.
Gotcha.
So, and then that can lead to increase in, postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety,
Got it.
afterwards.
Got it.
So, the quality of the relationship during this whole period has a big impact on a person's perinatal journey. And that was something that I learned as well. Like, just the impact of having a good relationship, a healthy relationship with your partner.
That's a good point. I'm wondering, are there things preventatively that, a woman in a relationship expecting that there are things as a couple that they can do to help offset the risk of postpartum stress and anxiety and depression?
Yeah, I think that just having the partner have some education about what that process is like, and how pregnancy impacts women or birthing persons uh emotionally, how the hormones impact you
Yeah.
emotionally. Just, I mean, the whole time from the time you get pregnant and, to, the postpartum period,
Yeah.
there is an impact to your physical health, your mental health. And so knowing that and being able to support your partner, as the non-birthing parent, being able to support your partner through that. In the postpartum period, something as simple as, the sleep disturbance that happens in the postpartum period, it's usually, it's definitely, the big burden is usually on the birthing parent. But for the partner to be able to acknowledge, like, okay, it's very important that she gets some sleep. And how can I support her in getting the rest that she needs?
Gotcha. So
Yeah. I mean, very simple.
yeah, that is and helpful because you're right that sleep deprivation, especially during that time, can be very impactful, and those resources are needed in
Mhm.
recovering and adjusting to that new stage in the family's
Yes.
relationship. So I'm thinking like couples counseling could be a good thing, or getting some education, maybe
Mhm.
online for some of the resources that you talked about. Anything
Yeah.
else in that prevention and education portion that a couple could maybe look to help offset those risks?
Yeah, I think that, yeah, I would say definitely couples counseling and support. I think, individual
Okay.
counseling and support for both partners, can be helpful to have a space where they could kind of explore their own journeys and what does becoming a parent look like for them? What does it mean to them? And, just really to be able to, to explore that. I think, for couples dealing with infertility and, pregnancy loss and things like that, I think that it's important for them to have some space to be able to deal with the grief related to that,
Yeah.
to things not happening in the way that they had planned,
Yeah.
and dealing with that. It has such a profound impact, on relationships. I see, having experiencing loss, whether it's loss of a pregnancy, or a child, or just dealing with infertility, not
Right.
being able to to get pregnant. And it just has a there's a lot of grief there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of grief there that it would be
Imagine.
helpful, yeah, for them to have some space to be able to explore that and process it, and, learn some ways to cope with it.
The other thing, and I don't know offhand, but I'm wondering even like if there are support groups, and I don't know if you do anything like that, or offering groups, or even finding ways to explore, building out your natural supports. I'm sure it can be difficult. I'm imagining on the other side trying to support, someone that you care about who's having infertility issues, or grieving the loss of a child, and finding ways to be supportive. I didn't know if you had any thoughts on that, but
I think, the one thing that you were mentioning towards the end in terms of support that I think is so very helpful is having this community support,
yeah,
so having familial support, so having family members, help you, help provide support is, can be such a big, yeah,
help. Yeah.
yeah, I think a lot of people just really struggle with that.
And having that sense that you're not alone in this, and I'm imagining also it helping to reduce that feeling of isolation that sometimes can happen, I would imagine, in a situation
Mhm.
like that. um,
Yeah.
so that's really helpful. I'm wondering if someone is interested, and they want to work with you, how can they find you? Where can they go to access your support?
Yeah, so they can find me on my website, bloompsychotherapycenter.com, and they can email me at bloompsychotherapy@gmail.com. So, those are, the places. And I'm also listed on Therapy for Black Girls, Psychology Today. So those are some other places they can, definitely find me.
And I'm imagining that's probably also, those are some great places to kind of keep in touch with the different offerings and things that you have available.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Before we close, just one last thing we like to ask everybody before they leave, and that is, what's the one or couple everyday mindset shift or strategy or takeaway, the thing that you hope anyone listening can pull away, whether it's a possible client, whether it's, a possible, community ally or supporter, someone who's just hearing this for the first time. What's the thing that they can take away, the actionable step or shift in their commitment to getting more of the life or getting closer to the thing that, in this case, helping them to better understand the resources and support that are available. Anything that you can offer in that?
Yeah, I would say, one, knowing that you're not alone, that there are resources that are out there. And I would say, just moving forward, going ahead and sending the email, talking to someone, just
Yeah,
reaching out, taking that first step, because that's always the hardest, is to take the first step in getting some support and some help.
that's a good tip. It is a risk taking that first step.
Yeah,
But
it
behind
is.
it, it sounds like there's all of these tremendous resources that are available once you do. So that's encouraging.
Yes, 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 yes.
Well, I want to thank you, Miss Williams, for being here with us and sharing all this wonderful information. As I shared, we're going to put all of those wonderful links in the notes. So anybody who's interested can reach out to you or tap into those other resources that we talked about. Um, all right. Well, thank you again. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We'll see you next time and have a great day.
All right. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome.